The Wild West was a land of endless horizons, danger, and untamed spirits. But what happens when a lonely rancher crosses paths with a fierce Apache woman who refuses to obey anyone? He thought he was buying control, but little did he know, he was about to discover the greatest love of his life. Stay tuned, because this story will take you on a journey of courage, passion, and unexpected romance in the heart of the West. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with someone who loves wild, unforgettable love stories. Comment below if you believe love can be found in the most unexpected places. Now, let's get started. The sun was sinking low over the endless prairie, casting a golden haze across the rolling hills and dusty paths that led to the remote ranch of James Carter. He was a man of solitude, hardened by years of isolation and the relentless challenges of the Wild West. His hands bore the calluses of labor, and his eyes reflected a life spent staring into empty horizons, seeking something he could not name. The vast land around him whispered stories of danger, hope, and survival, but in the quiet moments, he realized that what he truly craved was not wealth or power, it was companionship, a heart that could match his own. James had grown accustomed to the rhythm of his days, rising before the first light to tend to his cattle, repair fences, and prepare for the unpredictable nature of ranch life. The prairie, while beautiful, was unforgiving, and he had learned early that trust was earned through patience and deeds rather than words. Yet, as he worked, a sense of loneliness lingered in the edges of his mind, a quiet ache he could not escape. The townsfolk occasionally whispered about a woman from the Apache tribe, a woman fierce and unyielding, whose spirit could not be broken. Their tales intrigued him, stirring a curiosity that had long been dormant, and he began to wonder if fate would lead her to his door. When the trader arrived, James felt a mix of hesitation and curiosity. The man spoke of an Apache woman who had been captured, describing her as rebellious and difficult to command. "She won't obey like other women," the trader said, emphasizing her defiance. James' brow furrowed, his mind wrestling with the idea. He had never considered purchasing a person, but the thought of her being close, of seeing the fierce spark in her eyes again, ignited a longing he could not ignore. It was not ownership he sought, it was connection, a chance to encounter the wild spirit that had captured his imagination and refused to let go. When she arrived at the ranch, the wind seemed to shift, carrying with it an air of defiance and strength. Yana, the Apache woman whose name meant eternal blossom, stepped onto the land with a poise that commanded respect. Her dark eyes scanned the surroundings, sharp and unwavering, and her posture spoke of freedom, pride, and untamed spirit. James observed her silently, realizing that any notion of control he might have harbored would be useless. She was not a person to bend or command. She was a force of nature, wild and brilliant, whose presence alone challenged the stillness he had grown used to. The first days were tense. Yana refused to follow instructions, ignored his attempts at guidance, and moved through the ranch with a grace that made every chore look effortless. Yet, as he watched her work with the horses, handle the livestock, and navigate the rugged terrain, James found himself captivated. She was not merely strong, she was intelligent, resourceful, and fiercely independent. Her laughter, though rare, carried a melodic note that lingered in his thoughts. Each encounter with her reminded him that he was not dealing with someone ordinary, and the fire of her spirit began to ignite something deep within his own heart. Evenings were the hardest. The ranch house was quiet except for the crackle of the fire and the distant cries of coyotes. James often found himself staring into the flames, reflecting on the events of the day. Yana would sit across from him, silent and composed, her eyes revealing thoughts he could not yet understand. He realized that this woman, whom he had once thought of as a challenge to be tamed, was teaching him lessons in humility, patience, and respect. Her presence challenged his assumptions, forced him to reconsider what strength and partnership truly meant, and slowly, an unspoken bond began to form between them. One afternoon, James decided to test his courage and approached her by the river that bordered the ranch. She was tending to the horses, her hands steady, her movements fluid and precise. The water sparkled in the sunlight, reflecting the strength and beauty she carried effortlessly. He spoke softly, not wanting to startle her. "Do you find peace here?" he asked. Yana paused, meeting his gaze with a calm certainty that made his heart skip a beat. "The land has its own way of speaking," she replied. "It listens if you are willing to hear." The simplicity of her words carried profound wisdom, and James felt an awakening inside him that he could not ignore. Days passed, and their connection grew subtly but undeniably. They shared the labor of the ranch, yet the companionship between them transcended mere cooperation. Yana taught him to read the land in ways he had never considered, noticing the rhythm of the wind, the subtle signs of wildlife, and the hidden beauty of the prairie. James, in turn, began to see the world through her eyes, understanding that her independence was not rebellion, but a profound expression of her identity. Slowly, a mutual respect blossomed, accompanied by an underlying current of admiration neither could deny. The turning point came unexpectedly. A storm swept across the mountains one evening, dark clouds swallowing the horizon, and the winds threatened to tear the ranch apart. James prepared as best as he could, securing the animals and checking the fences, but he realized that Yana was not intimidated. She moved through the torrential rain with confidence, riding her horse to ensure the livestock was safe. Watching her, James felt an overwhelming surge of admiration and emotion. The woman who had arrived defiant and untamed had become an inseparable part of his life, her courage and strength drawing him closer in ways he had never imagined. One night after the storm had passed and the stars emerged over the calm prairie, James finally spoke from the heart. He admitted to himself that he had been wrong to think of control or obedience. Love, he understood now, was not about possession, but about respect, trust, and mutual understanding. Yana, listening quietly, seemed to sense the change within him. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. The firelight danced across her features, illuminating the depth of her spirit. And James realized that the lonely man who had once sought ownership had discovered something far more profound. He had found a partner, an equal, a woman whose heart could match his own in strength and fire. Even as they shared quiet moments under the open sky, the ranch itself seemed to respond to their growing bond. The horses moved with ease, the fields seemed greener, and the land, harsh and unpredictable as it could be, felt alive with possibility. James understood that he had stumbled into something extraordinary, a love forged not through control, but through respect, patience, and the willingness to see the other fully. Yana had become the center of his world, not because she obeyed him, but because she had chosen to share her life, her spirit, and her strength with him. By the time the first frost arrived, signaling the coming of winter, the connection between them had deepened into something undeniable. They worked side by side, laughed together, and occasionally argued, each encounter strengthening their bond. James had learned that love in the Wild West was not easy, nor was it simple. It required courage, vulnerability, and an unwavering commitment to see each other as equals. Yet, for all the challenges, he felt a joy he had never known before. The lonely rancher had found his companion, and in doing so, discovered that the West held not only hardship, but also the promise of an enduring, transformative love. Winter came to the prairie with a quiet, solemn grace, blanketing the land in frost and snow. James and Yana moved through the cold with determination, tending to the cattle and ensuring the ranch survived the harsh season. Their bond, forged in the trials of the open West, had grown stronger. Each day, they learned more about one another, their silent glances carrying the weight of unspoken understanding. James marveled at how Yana thrived even in the cold, her spirit unbowed, her laughter cutting through the frozen air like a warm spark. He realized that love, like the prairie itself, required endurance, patience, and courage. One particularly bitter morning, James noticed tracks in the snow near the edge of the property. He frowned, sensing trouble. A rival rancher, envious of James' land and success, had likely come to challenge him. Yana noticed his tension, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. "Let me ride with you," she said calmly. James hesitated but then nodded, trusting her instincts. Together, they rode through the frozen fields, their horses' hooves crunching against the snow. The wind whipped around them, yet neither faltered. They were a team, their bond evident in every movement, every unspoken signal, and every shared glance as they approached the trespasser. The confrontation was swift but tense. The rival rancher had expected an easy intimidation, yet he found two determined, fearless figures waiting. Yana's voice was steady as she warned him to leave, and James followed with authority and calm resolve. The man, seeing their unity and courage, realized he had underestimated them. He muttered threats but retreated, leaving James and Yana victorious. As they rode back to the ranch, the adrenaline faded, and James felt an overwhelming surge of pride and affection for her. She had proven not only her strength, but also her loyalty, and in that moment, he knew he could not imagine life without her. That night, as they sat by the fire, the warmth of the flames mirrored the heat that had grown in James' heart. He reached for Yana's hand, feeling the smooth strength of her grip. "I have tried to understand love my whole life," he confessed, his voice low and earnest. "I thought it meant control, possession, or protection, but with you I have learned it is something far greater. It is trust, respect, and partnership. You have taught me that." Yana's eyes softened, and she squeezed his hand gently, her expression revealing the depth of her own feelings. The following weeks brought quieter days, yet their love deepened with each shared task, each sunrise, and each star-filled night. They repaired fences together, guided cattle across snow-covered pastures, and tended to the barn with silent efficiency. Laughter became a regular companion, a sound that echoed across the ranch and reminded them both of the joy that had eluded them for so long. Even in moments of silence, their connection was palpable, each understanding the other's needs, fears, and hopes without the need for words. The ranch, once a place of isolation, had transformed into a home filled with warmth, love, and partnership. Spring eventually arrived, melting the frost and bringing life back to the prairie. Flowers bloomed along the riverbanks, and the land seemed to celebrate their resilience and love. James and Ayana rode through the fields together, the wind in their hair, laughter on their lips, and hearts beating in unison. James felt a sense of completeness he had never known, a realization that the woman who had once resisted his control had become the center of his world. She was not only his partner in work, but his equal in spirit, mind, and heart. Their love had grown through trials, patience, and mutual respect. One afternoon, Yana led James to a secluded part of the prairie, where the wildflowers grew tall and the river shimmered under the sunlight. She stopped and faced him, her dark eyes shining with certainty and courage. "James," she said softly, "I came here to the West seeking freedom. I did not expect to find love, yet here we are. I choose to be with you not out of obligation, but because my heart wants it. I trust you, and I know we are stronger together." James, his chest full with emotion, pulled her close. "And I choose you, Ayana," he replied, "with every part of me for the rest of our lives." Their days became filled with shared dreams. Together, they expanded the ranch, planting orchards, building stronger fences, and improving the land. Their nights were spent under open skies, watching the stars and speaking of futures full of hope and possibility. Friends and neighbors noticed the transformation in James, seeing the change a partner like Yana had brought into his life. He was no longer the solitary rancher hardened by isolation. He was a man in love, strengthened by respect, compassion, and a partnership that transcended the ordinary. Challenges, of course, still came. Droughts, storms, and occasional disagreements tested their resolve, but each trial only strengthened their bond. James learned to listen more than he spoke, to follow Yana's guidance in moments where his instincts might have led him astray. Yana, in turn, embraced his steadfast nature, finding comfort in his reliability and determination. They complemented each other perfectly, each filling gaps in the other's life, and together they discovered a rhythm that made both the land and their hearts flourish. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, James and Ayana sat by the river, their hands entwined. "Do you remember when I first tried to command you?" James asked, his voice tinged with humor and humility. Yana smiled, the memory clearly vivid in her mind. "You thought you could own my spirit," she replied gently, "but you learned the truth. Love cannot be commanded. It must be shared, nurtured, and respected." James nodded, understanding fully now what he had always suspected. Love, like the West, required freedom, trust, and courage. In time, their love story became legendary in the region. Not because of the circumstances of her arrival or the initial hardships, but because of the profound connection they shared, built on equality, respect, and unwavering support. James and Ayana showed the West that love could emerge in the harshest conditions, flourish against all odds, and endure through trials and time. Their ranch thrived as a testament to their dedication, but more importantly, their hearts thrived, bound by a love that had been earned through patience, courage, and understanding. As years passed, James and Ayana continued to explore the prairie together, riding side by side, tending to their land, and savoring the quiet, precious moments of life. They raised horses, guided young ranch hands, and shared laughter that echoed across the vast landscape. Their love, once uncertain and tested by circumstance, had become unshakable, rooted in shared respect and the beauty of truly seeing one another. In the Wild West, where survival was often uncertain, they had found certainty in each other and a home in their shared heart. And so, as the sun sets over the endless prairie and the winds carry the whispers of the Wild West, remember the tale of James and Ayana. The lonely rancher who sought companionship discovered his equal, his partner, and his greatest love. The Apache woman who would not obey became the heart of his life, teaching him that love cannot be forced, only nurtured. Together they thrived, not just surviving the harsh land, but flourishing in a love as vast and enduring as the horizon itself. Their story is a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the deepest, most transformative love.